Hello everybody, welcome to Sunday School.
Well, thank you, Laurel. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to be here too, Brandon. It's a good day. I hope you guys are enjoying our travels together. Listen to him, 40 Steps on the Road to Resurrection. And I have thoroughly enjoyed each of these devotionals, but I think this week I like the ones that we're talking about a whole lot. So we will be discussing, just for those of you who are following along, Stop and Help the Homeless Guy, which is on page 109, and it's number 24.
And it says that there was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. Now, I just want to say that I didn't mean to dress in purple today, but it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
It's a coincidence.
It is, yes. Some people might call that a God wink. I just might call it an indigestion. Anyway, at his gate was laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far away, with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, "Father Abraham, have pity on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire." But Abraham replied, "Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. And besides all this, between us and you a great chasm has been set in place, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us." He answered, "Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my family, for I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them, so that they will not also come to this place of torment." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." "No, Father Abraham," he said, "but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." He said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead."
Well, you know where we're filming, right?
I mean, they're coming to get me. I knew they would.
So Jesus tells this story about Lazarus and the rich man, and it's a illustration, I guess, or a way of helping us to think about our response to the people that are in need, that are all around us.
Right. Right, that's a hard thing too, because for most of us, especially just where we are, and we're proud of that. I mean, we want to be in a place that where we can help people all the time, and
yes.
That's definitely true.
Yes, being a church in downtown Albany is very significant in the sense that this place that we are called to be is important, and I, for one, and I think many of us are very glad that we are here and have made the conscious decision to remain here throughout the decades.
Well, right, and whether we've tried to or not, it has become a part of our identity in the community.
Yes.
And how grateful I really am that that's the case.
Yes, and that the people who made these decisions ahead of us in the previous decades have it's really a commitment.
That's right.
It's a commitment to the community, but because we are here, we have ample opportunity to practice what it is that Jesus is teaching, because the poor are everywhere. They're around us.
All around
us.
All around us.
We see them frequently as we come in and out of our services. They are present with us. And I don't know, as I was reflecting on this, I think about the opportunities that we have as a downtown church to be able to engage with people in their lives, and to really see them, and to really care about them, and to minister to them and meet their needs. And so here's some things that I've been thinking about, Brandon, and you jump in and you tell me what you're thinking about, because I think this is a big topic, right? This is it's a big idea in the gospel. Jesus is always talking about the need to invest in the lives of the poor and the downtrodden. That is what the gospel is. It's an upside down way of thinking about life.
It really is. He often says, even just the talk of denying ourselves, it's like we, that's kind of how we're supposed to see things, give up everything, deny ourselves, and take up our cross. But part of that is giving up everything that we have in order to not only be with Jesus, but to help people to come to Jesus. And sometimes the way that you come to Jesus is through feeding them, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it's like the James says, you can't just say to somebody, "Oh, be warmed and filled, and I hope everything's fine," and then they leave and they're hungry and they don't have any clothes to go out into the cold, and then you expect them that they're going to come to know Jesus or something because of your kind words. Words are not always, words are important, but sometimes it requires that action and building the relationship, like you do at Sown every Sunday night. Building relationships with people in ways to bring them closer to the Lord, or to know the Lord.
Yes. So the meeting of a physical need can actually be an open door that allows us to even go deeper spiritually with people. But there are times when I think the Spirit prompts us to just respond to a physical need in that moment.
Oh, right,
sure. And we have an opportunity to help somebody, and instead of worrying so much about what that person is going to do with the gift that we give them, we just are released to let God take care of that.
That's one of the most interesting things, and I think it's one of the hardest things for us because, for most of us, we kind of think, well, we want to be careful. We don't always want to give to everybody because, well, we don't know if that's always going to be the wisest thing for that person. And there's something to be said for that, isn't there?
It is. It's a very real concern, and there's also the idea that what is the wisest way for us to steward God's money,
right?
And that when we are attempting to help people, that perhaps it is we're called upon to give, but perhaps that giving needs to be directed to a ministry such as Sunday Evening with the Neighbors,
right,
or the Salvation Army, or any group that is involved in direct ministry.
That's right. The interesting thing for me here, if we're going to make it overly spiritual here, that's our job, isn't it?
Right.
Is that, Jesus only calls us to give.
Right.
He doesn't call us to evaluate somebody's worthiness, to receive that gift.
Or evaluate what they're going to do with the gift, which is usually what we think about.
Which is.
So you've got all these layers here, Brandon. You've got layers of responsibility, and all of us wanting to have wisdom in how we give. We have Jesus telling us to give, and yet we also know that we have been taught that there are appropriate ways to give, and that some ways of giving are probably not as helpful and beneficial. But I think overriding all of this is the idea that we are led by the Spirit of God, and that there are times, even though I may choose to give on a consistent basis to something like Sunday Evening with the Neighbors,
right,
that is a place where I know that my contributions are going to be managed well and go directly to people who are in need. There is a time and a place when God interrupts me in what I am doing, and I encounter someone who needs help. And then in that moment, I have the opportunity to directly help in a way that maybe I wouldn't ordinarily do it, but I just feel the presence of the Spirit saying, this is yours to do.
Right.
And I don't want to want to make this such a formula for myself or for other people that we take out the idea that God can speak to us, and we can learn to respond to what the Spirit is telling us kind of on a moment by moment basis.
Right. I think we just have to pay close enough attention, really be quiet enough sometimes just to hear and to know the difference.
Yes.
Know the difference between somebody who's just trying to get something from you and somebody who really needs it, and oftentimes I can't decide that, and what's great is that whether or not this is the exact person, this is the right thing, we're still building the kingdom. We're still doing those things
that God has called
us to do.
One thing I would add to the conversation is that there is such I think a need for us as we respond to the Holy Spirit to see all people as valuable and to really see past the sometimes the dusty exterior and to look into people's eyes and to offer respect. And one of the things that I have learned, and so many of you have served at Sunday Evening with the Neighbors for so many years, you probably have figured this out long ago, but one of the things that I have learned is that in addition to giving people physical food and nourishment, you are offering them such respect and validation as human beings when you engage with them in real and meaningful ways. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad that we have brought Sunday Evening with the Neighbors back inside.
Oh no, I think it's really important.
Because it gives us more opportunity to be able to have real conversations with people and to understand them as real individuals.
Well, and dignity comes to people whenever we treat them like people.
Yes, and then we learn from them, and that is and so that is the beauty of this ministry. Is not just that we are giving, but that we are also receiving, because we are there together.
You know, just about the moment I think I'm going to teach somebody something is when I'm the one who needs to learn.
Yes.
And so it's so great. You know, Jesus did that again in another one of these lessons where he kind of met with people who were a little dusty and a little bit messed up and weren't exactly the right kind of people. You know, in like Luke chapter 17, he talks about going to Jerusalem. You know, this whole time has been heading to Jerusalem, and he goes through Samaria, and it says in verse 11, now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. When he saw them, he said, go show yourself to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, rise and go. Your faith has made you well.
Such a beautiful story. Jesus is talking to his followers about what it means to have faith, and he has been discussing even prior to this that even faith like a mustard seed is something that can that God will bless, and that there will be result or fruit that comes from that. And so here what you see that is so fascinating is that these beggars, lepers, who are considered to be untouchable and unclean.
That's right.
They come, and you know, we see instances in the Gospels where Jesus actually reaches out and touches people, and the healing occurs in that moment.
Right.
But here it seems that they have asked for healing. They have identified Jesus as Master.
Right. He's a healer. They know he can do something.
And it seems that they have a deeper understanding of who Jesus is even than perhaps the Pharisees do and some of the crowds that have been following. So these people who look like on the surface that they don't probably have a lot of understanding actually do know more than they would appear. And so they have this insight in who Jesus is. They ask him for this healing, and then Jesus says, go show yourself. Go show yourself to the priest. And so that's so interesting, isn't it? Because what you would have expected is that Jesus would have done something that would have indicated that they were already healed. And then the next step would be to go show yourself to the priest. So Jesus would have touched their skin, or Jesus would have said something else, or would have done something else.
Oh no, that's true. You know, you think. I mean, he didn't. He doesn't even say he lifted his hand and said,
"No, just
be
go
gone."
on. Just
you know,
go on.
Just go on.
So I think what Luke wants us to see here is the connection between the faith of these lepers, and the discussion of faith previously that Jesus had been having, and these lepers are responding in faith to what they believe is going to be true.
Right. It's like they're seeing it,
Yes.
already. Isn't that what faith is? The
Yes.
substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It's interesting, but it also mentions faith again with whenever the 10th, let's call him the 10th leper, turns and gives thanks to Jesus. What do you think that's talking about?
So, Brandon, this struck me years ago when I was reading this, and it jumped out at me, and I thought, my goodness, it seems to be that there have been two kinds of healings here.
Right. Yeah.
That the first group, where they all are sent to show themselves to the priest, it is their act of obedience in following through that allows them to experience the healing. So the healing is a result of their hearing first and then obeying, and they move out in faith, and then they are healed. This second example seems to be connected to gratitude.
It does, doesn't it? It's like somehow just by turning around and acknowledging the fact that this has happened, and I know the others probably were just excited, and I don't want to take away from them, but there's something extra there. There's something
Yes.
that he feels this sincere desire to connect with Jesus,
And his gratitude, then Jesus says, go your way, your faith has healed you. So the healing has occurred the second time.
A second time,
So
yeah.
Jesus isn't talking about physical healing. That's
No, I don't
already
think so.
happened. So it must be something maybe deeper, more from a spiritual place or an emotional place. Perhaps some of the wounds that you carry because you have been lived as a leper and felt the rejection of society.
Right.
That's all speculation, of course, but it's just interesting to think that the act of gratitude then opens the door for God to do a greater work within you.
It is the most wonderful thing, though, when you think about it, because that has been a word that we have batted around a lot, I think, since the pandemic.
Yes.
Gratitude. We're just grateful that people are here. We're just grateful to be able to be together. And I mean, I think that's a sincere thing, is that, when you lose that time with people, with human contact or whatever, I see it exactly that way as you're talking, as you're describing it from this story, is that we weren't lepers, thankfully, but we were apart physically. And so how that demonstrates the love that God has for us while we are away from Him, and that that gratitude that we have for that. If we can just get to that point where we realize we're all the leper, we're all one of those lepers.
Right. We're all the leper. We're all in need of God doing a work within us. And there's something that happens within us, and I guess you could look at both of these examples.
Sure.
There's something that happens within us when we move to obey what Jesus has already told us to do. And this is what this book is about, right? Listen to Him, that we're listening to Jesus all along this journey. And
That's
so
right.
He's giving us these instructions. And when we are willing to respond and obey, there's healing that occurs. But then the idea that as we live our lives, when we live with gratitude,
Right.
that God does a deeper work in us.
There's one other little short thing I wanted to bring up too, is that at the end of this week we have the story of the rich young ruler.
Yes.
And it's interesting because he talks about the commandments. He says, good teacher, what must I do to inherit the kingdom? And he says, well, what does the law teach you? And he starts giving off all these things that he's done since he was a kid, and then Jesus says, well, you still lack one thing. Sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven.
Did he really say everything, Brandon?
He really did. And then come and follow me. So he probably was already following him, but like we've said, that we have each one of these stories has had something to say about gratitude or our attitude of where we come to when we come to God,
Our response
to Jesus, our response to people that we come in contact with, and how we demonstrate the love of God to them. And I think this person was a good person. I think he was a disciple. I think he was somebody who wanted to do something. But Jesus tells him something that we probably would say, "Oh, Jesus couldn't have meant that, could he?"
We try to temper what Jesus says so many times. We try to kind of rein him in a little bit. Like Jesus, we like what he says, but we'd like to bring about 20% of it in, so that we can get the edges in a little bit.
Right, because I can control that a little better.
Yes.
I can do that.
Yes, and J.D. Walt points out that we just need to take Jesus at his word and to believe what he says, and instead of trying to figure out how we can manage it,
right,
we need to lean into it and to hear what he says. And so here's where I come down on this, Brandon. I think that the thing about listening to Jesus is that so many things of what Jesus invites us to do feel so intimidating. They feel like there is no way that I can do that, or it feels overwhelming to me. And yet I think what God would invite me to do is to recognize that I'm not doing this in my own strength.
No.
That it is the Spirit of God that is at work within us that gives us the discernment to know which person to respond to and how best to help someone who is asking for assistance.
That's right.
It is the Spirit of God within us that is calling us to move ahead and to act in faith on what we believe that God has called us to do, even before we see the proof, right?
That's right. Even Jesus' disciple says, "Well, who can be saved then? Who can be saved?" But what is Jesus' response? You know what? Humanity, humans can't do this, but God can. Nothing is impossible with God. But we leave that out, don't we?
We do.
We do, because it's like, I think if I can just get myself together, if I can just be good, and and the scripture tells us you can't be good. We can't on our own. But with him,
all things are possible.
All things are possible.
And so instead of diminishing the commands of Christ,
right,
or trying to manage his words, what we should do is throw ourselves at the throne of God and ask him for the grace to help us to be able to live into all of these things that Jesus is calling us to do, knowing that if he has called us, he will make it possible for us to fulfill what it is he has put in front of us to do.
That's right. That is truly being alive to God.
Yes.
Alive. That's the life that he wants us to have.
That's the life. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and we have had a good time today and look forward to seeing you again soon.
We will see you next week.
Bye.